everybody, this is Caitlin and my channel is called Zombie Eats Books. I have not posted in quite a while. I just haven't really been too interested in posting or discussing the books that I was reading. I wasn't reading very many anyways, but I did recently read 3 that I'd like to chat about, so I will do that now. So the first book that I'm going to talk about is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter. This was published in 2015 and Karen Slaughter is an American author. So this is a book about 3 sisters. The first sister, the eldest sister, goes missing at about the age of 18 and they never find her. So fast forward 20 years or however many years in the future, the other 2 sisters are now middle-aged and they both have their own families, and they start to uncover something that leads to the mystery of their sister's disappearance. Another element of the narrative is the father who had written letters to the older sister when he was alive, and you also get his chapters in between the chapters of the other 2 sisters. So the 2 remaining sisters are estranged. One of them is estranged from both her sister and their mother, and then the other one actually has a relationship with the mother. So there's an extra element of conflict there, and that is essentially the story. One thing that I liked about the narrative was in the beginning, there is sort of a critique of the way that the media handles young women that go missing, the way that they focus on their beauty and how it seems to be extra tragic if they were a beautiful young woman. That's always in the headlines, right? Beautiful young woman goes missing, beautiful young woman tragically murdered, whatever it is. The media ends up quickly turning the other way and demonizing her as the disappearance goes on, because they find out that she's this political activist and she's not the docile, young, beautiful woman that they're, promoting, basically. However, as the novel progresses, Karen Slaughter sort of seems to discredit herself by doing the opposite of that critique and talking about all of her characters, first and foremost as beautiful women, beautiful sisters that have gone through this tragedy and who have had these great emotional impacts in their life due to the disappearance of their beautiful sister. So whatever she was trying to do there, it didn't work. So one aspect of the novel that I didn't really like was that I thought the murders of the women were a bit gratuitous. For some reason, I just didn't believe them. I mean, I know that serial killers do awful things and that women have endured, lots of horrible ways that men have come up with to kill them. But for some reason in this book, it just didn't ring true, and it just seemed unnecessary and gross, and I just didn't want to read about the way that the women were killed. Having said all that, I did enjoy the first half of the book. I felt compelled to read. I wanted to know what happened to everybody. I wanted to know especially what happened to the missing sister. But as the book progressed, the last half of the book really fell flat for me. I lost all interest. I thought that the 2 sisters were really unlikable and weren't necessarily written to be unlikable, and I just didn't care after a certain point. I didn't think that any of the surprises were really surprises, and there was really only one. And yeah, I didn't really have the greatest reading experience here. If you have any recommendations for any Karen Slaughter thrillers, mysteries that you think that I should read that are way better than this one, let me know, because at this point, I don't think I'll be picking up a Karen Slaughter book again. I ended up giving this a 2 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I read was Nightwaking by Sarah Moss. This was published in 2011, and Sarah Moss is an English author. So I read The Tidal Zone in 2017 and I absolutely loved it. So I thought that I would continue to read Sarah Moss, and I am not disappointed. I will continue to read more of her books after this. This is a book that has a lot in it, but it's also a very quiet novel. Basically, the premise is this family that moves to this island, to the ancestral home of the husband, with their 2 kids, and their job is to renovate a small cottage where people can rent and get away from the city and stay and relax. And also, the husband has a job apart from that where he is going to be studying the puffins on the island and their migration patterns and try to prevent their extinction. There are a couple of other elements to the novel. One is that the wife and the older son find the skeleton of a baby in the garden. So there's a police investigation into that and a mystery surrounding that. And then there are also these letters interspersed throughout the novel from the nurse that went to the island in the late 19th century to try to help decrease the incidence of infant mortality at the time. And then there's also this huge tension between natives to the island and outsiders. So there's a lot of tension between the family and the people that live in the town. And then even back in the late 19th century, when you're reading those letters, it's magnified times 10. Apparently at some point, I think during the 1950s, during the Second World War, the island was actually vacated. The natives there were uneducated and poor and lived in these horrible conditions, and they were really being mistreated by the person that owned the ancestral home at the time, who wasn't always a relative of the husband, but at some point became an owner, I think around the 1850s. Sorry, it was my dog. Speaking of, this is Loki. Say hi, Loki. He's trying to mess up my video. He is a puppy. He is 14 weeks old, and he is aptly named. He is definitely the little god of mischief running around this house right now. Yeah. You ready to go outside? Okay. So back to the novel, lots of elements to consider, but I think one of the main ideas of the book is the conflict between motherhood and career, and how the men in the novel really criticize the mother for trying to balance the two. And anytime she's anything less than perfect, she is definitely highly criticized, and I wanted to punch most of the men in this book in the face. But I really, really enjoyed that exploration, and I would highly recommend this book. I think especially if you're interested in any of those topics that I mentioned, gender being the one in the forefront, I think then you would like this book as well. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So the last book that I read was The Killer Inside Me by Jim Thompson. This was published in the 1950s, and Jim Thompson is an American author. This book was straight up fascinating. I was expecting a really cliche mystery novel with a detective who's maybe down on his luck, maybe he's an alcoholic, and maybe it's a little gritty, and I did not get that at all, and I'm so happy that I didn't, because it's actually a book about a cop who is a psychopath, and delving into his mind was really, really fun. And maybe there's something wrong with me, but I thought that it was a really fun book. It was a fast read, and I thought that it was really darkly humorous. So the cop, who is killing a bunch of people basically, is this guy who's highly intelligent, but he has adopted the persona of a normal person within this 1950s Texas small town. And they have been fooled. Like, they have no idea who he is or what he's really like, but within the narrative, you, the reader, gets the contrast between how he wants to act, how he really is, and the persona that he has developed and adapted to the point that people think that he's a really boring, stupid guy. So I really, really enjoyed that. I loved how absurd it was. The parts that I found funny were usually related to him murdering someone and not feeling anything. And then afterwards, maybe somebody doesn't come to visit him and he thinks that's really rude. And so he's kind of hurt by that. And just moments like that I thought were brilliant. It really, I believed the character. I believed that he was a cop who was a psychopath, and all of his thoughts made sense to me. I mean, they didn't make sense because they're the thoughts of a psychopath, and he does still have emotions, but they're just very flawed and messed up, and he doesn't process things the way that he's supposed to process them emotionally, but he does still think about the things he does. He thinks about whether it's right or wrong, and how he has this complete lack of caring whenever he murders someone. So basically, if you want to delve into the mind of a character that's really well done and believable, and it's, I mean, you got to know that it's disturbing and that maybe other people won't find it as darkly humorous as I did. Maybe they'll just find it straight up disturbing. The first scene, in fact, is pretty violent and disturbing. But the rest of them, I think, are sort of tame in comparison. So yeah, pick it up. I ended up giving it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I think it was more like a 3 or 4. It was a book where I couldn't really decide whether I wanted to rate it a 3 or a 4, so I just went in the middle. And yeah, I'm looking forward to reading more from Jim Thompson to see what else he has, what else he's written, what else is in his brain, because it was really interesting. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have read any of these books. Let me know what you thought about them if you have. Let me know if you have any recommendations for me based on what I liked or didn't like. I should be coming out with a book haul soon, just because I just bought a lot of books and I got a big box in the mail, so I feel like I should do something with it rather than just put it on my shelf and let it sit there. So look for that, and hopefully I'll be posting a little more in the future. I'm sorry I'm so inconsistent with it, but that's just the way I am. I don't think I can promise anything else. Yeah, thanks for watching. So I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.